Deep in the mountains of the Iranian plateau, a treasure hunter drives a steel shovel into a sealed stone floor. The heavy strike breaches the cavity below, releasing a thick plume of white dust into the confined space. Within seconds, the excavator collapses in violent respiratory distress, a victim of what local legends call a demon's curse. This rapid physical collapse has nothing to do with supernatural guardians. The unfortunate digger is experiencing severe pulmonary failure from acute chemical poisoning. This scenario is one of the most common and deadly mistakes made by amateur archaeologists in the Near East. They deploy heavy machinery and waste months of operating capital, all because they fail to visually discriminate between a royal treasure vault and a totally sterile religious monument. The ultimate false positive target responsible for these fatal errors is the Dakhma, widely known as the Zoroastrian Tower of Silence. It is easy to see why untrained diggers take the bait. When they survey these ancient ruins, they find massive, concentric stone walls rimming a deep central shaft. Their immediate assumption is that a structure of this scale must be hiding a priestly hoard. But surviving in this rugged historical terrain means learning to read the diagnostic markers of ancient engineering. You have to know exactly when an imposing mountain structure contains absolute zero. To understand why these towers are entirely empty of gold, we can look at this diagram of the Zoroastrian purity matrix. The state religion of ancient Persia operated on a strict theology where 4 core elements, earth, water, fire, and air, are sacred creations. In contrast, a dead body, nasu, was viewed as the ultimate vessel of demonic contamination, kept entirely separate from the sacred natural world. This belief created a rigid structural prohibition. Burying a corpse defiles the earth, and burning it corrupts the sacred fire. Throwing it into a river poisons the water table. Ancient architects had to solve this problem while maintaining total material isolation. When a person died, specialized corpse bearers stripped the body completely naked. Any metal, cloth, or coin that touched the deceased instantly absorbed the impurity. It became structurally unclean and could not be recycled or buried. Gold and coins were kept firmly inside the world of the living. Hiding wealth inside a platform built for the dead would be a severe theological crime. To physically enforce this separation, engineers built the Dakhmas exclusively on barren, wind-swept mountain peaks, intentionally isolating them from agricultural fields and living populations. If we examine this top-down blueprint of a tower's interior layout, we can see exactly how they engineered the disposal process. The paved floor operates like a giant, shallow funnel, sloping to a geometric central pit. The floor is carved with tracking grooves called pavi. The outer ring held adult men, the middle ring held women, and the inner ring was reserved for children. Left completely exposed under the intense desert sun, the remains were targeted by flesh-eating birds like vultures and ravens. Within hours, the bones were stripped entirely clean of organic material. What remained was swept by iron tongs into the ostodon, the deep central pit. Uneducated diggers assume this stone-lined shaft is an empty vault waiting to be breached. In reality, it was built as a highly active chemical reactor. We can see the exact chemical makeup of that reactor in this cross-section. Ancient priests packed the bottom of the shaft with alternating industrial layers of quicklime, rock salt, and charcoal, topped by bleached bones. Rainwater channeled directly into the pit reacted violently with the quicklime, generating a boiling, caustic alkaline fluid that pulverized the bones into sediment, which brings us directly back to our opening hook. Digging into that compost matrix violently disturbs ancient chemical agents. With a single strike of a shovel, high concentrations of phosphorus and ultrafine bone dust become airborne, immediately burning the lungs of anyone breathing inside the enclosed shaft. There is no gold here. The Dakhma is a highly successful, self-contained environmental machine, designed specifically to neutralize biological waste without contaminating the surrounding earth. This rigid theological logic applies to smaller targets across the region as well. High on vertical limestone cliffs, you will often spot small, square, rock-cut cavities known as cliff ostodons. Hunters frequently mistake these for individual wealth niches or hidden courier caches. They are actually just shallow ossuaries, simple bone boxes meant to hold dry remains for families who lacked access to a massive mountain tower. Filtering out these false positives is the most valuable discrimination setting a landscape archaeologist can master. Walking away from a sterile religious site saves human health, equipment, and precious time. By completely ruling out this sacred architecture of the dead, you can finally redirect your sensors toward the true high-yield targets built by the living elites of ancient Persia, multi-room royal rock-cut tombs. But locating a wealth-bearing vault introduces a completely different set of structural problems. Breaching real treasure caches requires decoding symmetrical rock cuts, bypassing massive stone portcullis seals, and surviving the lethal mechanical gravity traps engineered specifically to crush the first person through the door. This rigid theological logic applies to smaller targets across the region as well. High on vertical limestone cliffs, you will often spot small, square rock-cut cavities known as cliff ostodons. Hunters frequently mistake these for individual whelknishes or hidden courier caches. They are actually just shallow ossuaries, simple bone boxes meant to hold dry remains for families who lacked access to a massive mountain tower. Filtering out these false positives is the most valuable discrimination setting a landscape archaeologist can master. Walking away from a sterile religious site saves human health, equipment, and precious time. By completely ruling out the sacred architecture of the dead, you can finally redirect your sensors toward the true high-yield targets built by the living elites of ancient Persia, multi-room royal rock-cut tombs. But locating a wealth-bearing vault introduces a completely different set of structural problems. Breaching real treasure caches requires decoding symmetrical rock cuts, bypassing massive stone portcullis seals, and surviving the lethal mechanical gravity traps engineered specifically to crush the first person through the door. With sterile religious ossuaries finally filtered out of the search grid, we cross the threshold into high-conductivity target zones, Sasanian royal rock-cut tombs. Elite military commanders and local kings rejected the purity-focused burial rites of the religious classes. They adhered to an older, prestige-driven worldview, believing a ruler must enter the afterlife fully armored and surrounded by his physical arsenal. This conviction left behind massive, tangible treasuries, gold masks, silver coins, and gemstone-encrusted longswords buried directly alongside the ruler. To protect this wealth from dynastic rivals and invaders, royal engineers carved massive, multi-room bunkers directly into the heart of vertical mountain gorges. Engineers designed these heavily sealed kinsman vaults as weaponized bunkers, built to remain impenetrable for thousands of years. Identifying a true royal tomb starts with the exterior cliff face. Look for a symmetrical structural blueprint, specifically the deep, cross-shaped entry frames carved into the vertical rock. High-relief iconography provides further evidence. These facades often depict the ruler in state ceremonies or trampling a defeated foe. The presence of even a single rock-cut column or an Achaemenid-style capital serves as an absolute architectural indicator. Spotting these monumental markers confirms the site is a state-level, asset-bearing crypt. This allows the explorer to separate the signal of a royal vault from the general noise of the landscape. The primary mechanical barrier is the sliding portcullis stone, a multi-ton block of basalt dropped vertically into a precision-chiseled slot to lock the entry via deadweight physics. Engineers backfilled gaps around this stone with royal Saruj, a mortar of volcanic ash, quicklime, and bitumen. Alchemists added powdered magnetite and bronze directly into the wet mix. This metallic polymer matrix absorbs kinetic energy, causing iron chisels to rebound without cracking the seal. Amateur looters often misidentify this physical rebound as an indestructible spiritual shield, failing to recognize the metallurgical genius behind the mortar. Forcing a breach triggers a double-layered defensive matrix. The first threat is a lethal anoxic atmosphere trapped within the chambers. Decaying organics and leather shields depleted the internal oxygen, replacing it with a lethal cocktail of hydrogen sulfide and phosphine gas. Safe access requires microdrilling a pilot hole for a gas sensor, then pumping high-pressure air into the matrix to vent the toxic gases. Once the atmosphere is purged, a secondary physical trap remains poised directly behind the door. Engineers balanced a sealing stone wedge on a delicate pivot. Forcing the portcullis releases it, dropping the stone to crush the entry. To bypass, hydraulic jacks are slid through the pilot hole to lock the gravity trap securely against the ceiling before dismantling the door. Treating the architecture as an active, hostile system is the only way to survive. Brute force in these environments guarantees a lethal collapse. Inside, the terrain shifts to a flat, highly organized crypt matrix, abandoning the sloped, funnel-like architecture of religious sites. 3 distinct asset zones exist within these chambers: inside the sealed stone sarcophagi, within hidden subfloor chambers, and in mezzanine ceiling vaults designed to be missed by rushing intruders. This discovery brings a massive responsibility. Explorers must use high-precision GIS tools to digitally map the architectural boundaries of these intact chambers. Dynamiting sarcophagi walls to extract loose items is an act of historical vandalism that destroys the site's most significant data. Ancient precious metals and royal sigils derive their ultimate value from their provenance. Without their intact historical context, these items lose the majority of their scientific and commercial significance. Applying strict discrimination settings and precise bypass protocols ensures safety while preserving the architectural genius of the ancients. This rigor elevates exploration into a scientific art form.